3 days passed on Nexus Prime. The alien races continued their meetings and arguments. They made plans and drew battle formations on holographic maps. They boasted about their weapons and their warriors, and they continued to ignore the humans sitting quietly in the back. Daniel Hayes spent those days watching and learning. He attended every meeting and took mental notes on everything. Laura Mitchell trained in the small exercise room attached to their quarters. Kevin Park studied every piece of alien technology he could access. Megan Torres listened to conversations in hallways and dining areas, picking up information that others did not think to hide from the primitive humans. On the morning of the 4th day, Daniel woke to the sound of alarms. The noise was loud and sharp. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Daniel jumped out of bed and was dressed in seconds. His military training had never left him. He ran into the main room, where his team was already gathering. "What is happening?" Laura asked. She was pulling on her uniform jacket. Kevin had his tablet out and was scanning through station broadcasts. His face went pale. "The Shadow Maw. They are here." "Here?" Megan said. "At the station? That is impossible. They were supposed to be 2 months away." "They must have found a faster route," Kevin said, "or they were hiding closer than anyone knew." Daniel moved to the window. What he saw made his heart stop. The space outside was filled with ships. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. The Shadow Maw vessels were black as the void itself, shaped like twisted organic things rather than machines. They blocked out the light from the nearby sun. The station fell into shadow. "How many?" Laura whispered. "I cannot count them all," Kevin said. "The scanners show over 5,000 ships, maybe more." The station shook as the first attack hit. The Velthari defense fleet had moved to intercept, but their plasma cannons seemed to do nothing. Daniel watched as bright beams of energy struck the Shadow Maw ships. The black hulls absorbed the blasts like water soaking into sand. Then the enemy ships grew slightly larger, feeding on the power. "They are absorbing the attacks," Kevin said. "Just as I predicted. The energy weapons are making them stronger." A Velthari cruiser exploded in a ball of fire, then another. The Krixtal war fleet joined the battle, their ships darting between the enemy with impressive speed. But their weapons had the same problem. Plasma, particle beams, antimatter missiles, all energy, all useless. The station shook again, harder this time. Daniel turned to his team. "We need to move. Now." They ran through the corridors of Nexus Prime. All around them, aliens were panicking. The Velthari moved as fast as their crystal bodies could carry them. The Krixtal warriors drew their weapons, though there was nothing to shoot yet. The Morvani stood in circles, trying to use their mental powers against the distant enemy ships. Daniel led his team toward the command center. They needed information. They needed to know if there was a plan. The command center was chaos. Chancellor Vorik stood at the main display, shouting orders that no one seemed to follow. General Thresh was demanding that more ships be sent to the front line. Other alien leaders argued and blamed each other for not seeing the attack coming. "The evacuation routes are blocked," someone announced. "Shadow Maw vessels have surrounded the station." "Then we fight our way out," Thresh said. "The Krixtal do not run." "Your warriors are dying," a Morvani projected into the room. "Your weapons do nothing." On the main screen, the battle continued to go badly. For every Shadow Maw ship that was destroyed by massed fire, 10 more seemed to appear. The alien defense fleet was being torn apart. Daniel watched in silence. Laura stood beside him, her hands clenched into fists. "We have to do something," she said. "I know," Daniel replied. He stepped forward into the group of arguing aliens. Several of them looked at him with surprise and annoyance. What was the human doing here? "Chancellor Vorix," Daniel said in a clear voice. Vorix turned. His crystal face showed irritation. "This is not the time for your species to offer help, human. We have real problems to solve." "Your weapons are not working," Daniel said. "The Shadow Maw absorb energy attacks. The more you fire, the stronger they become." "We know this," Thresh snapped. "We are not fools." "Then you know that you cannot win this fight with your current strategy." Voryx moved closer to Daniel. His glowing body towered over the human. "And what would you suggest? That we throw rocks at them like your ancestors?" Daniel did not step back. He met the alien's gaze directly. "Something like that. Yes." Before Voryx could respond, another explosion rocked the station. Part of the outer hull had been breached. Emergency doors slammed shut to contain the damage. Warning messages filled the air. "We do not have time for this," Voryx said. He turned away from Daniel and went back to the main display. "All ships, continue firing. Focus on their command vessels." Daniel watched as more alien ships died on the screen. The Shadow Maw pressed closer to the station. It would only be a matter of time before they broke through. He looked at Laura. "Get to our quarters. There is a case under my bed. Bring it here." Laura nodded and ran. She knew not to ask questions. Daniel turned to Kevin. "Tell Santos to bring the fleet." Kevin pulled out his communication device. His fingers moved quickly. "Message sent. They will receive it in a few minutes." Megan touched Daniel's arm. "The Relentless is 12 hours away at maximum speed. Can the station hold that long?" "It will have to," Daniel said. Laura returned, running through the chaos with a metal case in her arms. It was heavy and plain, marked with nothing but a small Earth flag on the side. Daniel took the case and opened it on a nearby table. Inside were weapons that looked strange to alien eyes. Simple, mechanical, no glowing parts or energy cells, just metal and springs and chemical propellant. "What are those?" a Krixal warrior asked. He had wandered over to see what the humans were doing. "Guns," Daniel said. "Old-fashioned guns. They fire metal slugs using controlled explosions." The warrior made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "Those could not hurt a Shadow Maw." "We will see," Daniel said. He handed weapons to his team. Each of them checked their gun with practiced hands. They had all trained with these weapons. Every human in space service did. Another explosion shook the station. This time, the lights flickered and went out. Emergency power came on a moment later, casting everything in a dim red glow. "They are boarding us," someone shouted. Alarms changed from the attack warning to something worse. "Internal breach. Enemy on the station." Daniel looked at his small team of 4 humans. They were surrounded by aliens who had mocked them, dismissed them, and called them primitive. Now those same aliens were about to learn what humans could do. "Stay close," Daniel said, "and remember your training." Somewhere in the distance, they heard the sound of screaming. The screaming grew louder. It came from the lower levels of the station, where the Shadow Maw boarding parties had broken through. Krixal warriors rushed toward the sound, their plasma rifles ready. But Daniel knew those weapons would not help them. He led his team through the corridors at a steady pace. Laura walked beside him, her gun held in both hands. Kevin stayed close behind, still monitoring communications on his tablet. Megan brought up the rear, watching for threats. They turned a corner and found chaos. A group of Velthari diplomats were running toward them, their crystal bodies flashing with fear. Behind them came something terrible. The Shadow Maw soldiers were not like anything Daniel had seen before. They were tall and thin, made of the same black material as their ships. Their bodies seemed to shift and change as they moved, like shadows given physical form. They had no faces, just smooth darkness where features should be. A Krixtal warrior stepped forward and fired his plasma rifle. The bright bolt of energy struck the lead Shadow Maw directly in the chest. The creature absorbed the blast without slowing down. Its body pulsed, growing slightly larger, stronger. Energy weapons, feed them, Kevin shouted. Stop firing. But the Crixtall could not hear him over the noise. More warriors fired. More energy was absorbed. The Shadow Moss seemed to enjoy it. Daniel raised his gun and fired 3 shots. The sound was loud and sharp, different from the hum of plasma weapons. Metal slugs flew through the air and struck the lead Shadow Maw with physical force. The creature stumbled. Black liquid sprayed from the holes in its body. It made a sound that might have been surprise or pain. Then it fell. Every alien in the corridor turned to stare at Daniel. He fired again, dropping a second Shadow Maw. Laura joined in, her shots precise and controlled. In less than 10 seconds, the 5 enemy soldiers lay dead on the floor. The Crixtall warrior walked over to one of the bodies. He poked it with his foot, watching the black liquid seep out. "How did you do that?" he asked. "Physical projectiles," Daniel said. "Kinetic energy, not radiant energy. They cannot absorb a bullet that tears through their body." The warrior looked at Daniel with new eyes. "You knew this would work?" "I suspected. Now I know for certain." More screams echoed from nearby corridors. The station was under attack from multiple points. Daniel checked his ammunition. He had 3 more magazines. Not nearly enough. "We need to get to the communication center," he said. "Our fleet is coming, but they need coordinates. They need to know where to focus their attack." The Crixtall warrior straightened up to his full height. His 4 arms held his now useless rifle. "I am Warrior Kreth of the 3rd Claw. I will escort you. My weapon may be useless, but my claws are not." Daniel nodded. "Then stay close." They moved through the station as a group. More Crixtall warriors joined them, abandoning their plasma rifles and drawing the blade weapons they carried as backups. The Velthari had no physical weapons at all. Their entire civilization had evolved past such primitive tools. Now that evolution might kill them. At every intersection, they encountered more Shadow Maw. Daniel and Laura took turns firing, conserving ammunition when they could. Each shot had to count. Kevin called out enemy positions using his scanner. Megan shouted warnings in multiple languages, so everyone could understand. The communication center was 2 levels up and half a kilometer away. It felt like crossing a battlefield. They found Chancellor Vorix in a side corridor, surrounded by his personal guards. The guards had energy shields that the Shadow Maw were trying to break through. It was only a matter of time before they succeeded. Daniel did not hesitate. He fired past the guards and into the enemy cluster. 3 Shadow Maw fell before the others realized what was happening. Laura took down 2 more. The remaining enemies retreated into the shadows. Vorix stared at Daniel with something close to shock. His crystal body dimmed. "You killed them," the Chancellor said, "with those primitive weapons." "Yes," Daniel said. "Come with us. We are going to the communication center." "Why would I follow a human?" Daniel stepped closer to the alien leader. "Because right now, these primitive weapons are the only thing keeping you alive. Your energy shields will fail. Your guards cannot stop them. But my team can. So you can follow us, or you can die here. Your choice." It was the most direct Daniel had ever spoken to an alien leader. He did not have time for politics or pride. Not anymore. Vorix was silent for a long moment. Then he gestured to his guards. "We will follow the humans." The group moved on. They gathered more survivors as they went. Crixtall warriors, Morvani telepaths, Velthari civilians. Species that had laughed at humanity now walked behind them, protected by 4 humans with metal guns. They reached the communication center after 20 minutes of fighting. Daniel had used half his remaining ammunition. Laura was down to her last magazine. Inside, the equipment was still working. Kevin ran to the main console and began typing. His fingers moved faster than the aliens could follow. "I am sending coordinates to the Relentless," he said. Admiral Santos needs to know where the main Shadowmaw ships are located. How long until your fleet arrives? Vorex asked. Daniel checked his watch. Maybe 6 if they push their engines. We cannot hold for 6 hours, Kreth said. We do not have the weapons. Daniel looked around the room. There were maybe 50 survivors here. Only he and Laura had guns that worked against the enemy. The Krixtal had blades, but would have to get close to use them. The Morvani had mental powers that seemed to confuse the Shadowmaw, but not stop them. It was not enough. He knew it was not enough. Then Kevin looked up from the console with something like hope in his eyes. Commander, the fleet is not 7 hours away. Admiral Santos launched them early. They have been traveling toward us since your first message. How long? 90 minutes, maybe less. The room fell silent. Then Vorex spoke. Your admiral acted without orders from the council. He sent ships without permission. Daniel turned to face the Chancellor. Yes, because he knew that when something went wrong, we would need help fast. That is what humans do. We prepare for the worst, while hoping for the best. That is either very wise, or very arrogant, Vorex said. Maybe both, Daniel replied. But right now, it might save your life. Another explosion shook the station. The Shadowmaw were getting closer. 90 minutes, Laura said. We just have to hold for 90 minutes. Daniel picked up his gun and checked his ammunition one more time. 15 rounds. 15 shots to hold off an army. Then we hold, he said, no matter what comes through that door. Outside, in the darkness of space, 12 human ships burned toward them at impossible speed. Admiral Santos stood on the bridge of the Relentless, watching the battle unfold on his screen. His crew worked in focused silence. All ships, prepare for combat, Santos ordered. Load the railguns. Arm the kinetic missiles. We are going to show these things what human weapons can do. Weapons came online. Targeting systems locked. Metal ammunition was loaded into magnetic accelerators that would fire them at a fraction of light speed. The humans were coming, and they were bringing the thunder. The Shadowmaw attacked the communication center 3 times in the next hour. Each time, Daniel and Laura held the line. Each time, they lost a little more ammunition. Each time, more aliens watched in amazement, as simple metal bullets did what their advanced technology could not. Daniel fired his last round into a Shadowmaw soldier that had gotten too close to a group of Velthari civilians. The creature fell, twitching and leaking black fluid. Then his gun clicked empty. I am out, he said. Laura fired twice more, then lowered her weapon. Same. That was my last magazine. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The only weapons that worked against the enemy were now useless. We have knives, Megan said. She pulled a combat blade from her boot. Standard issue for Earth military. Knives against those things, a Velthari diplomat said. His voice was high with fear. That is suicide. She drew her own blade. But we do not give up. Warrior Kreth stepped forward. His mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. The humans will not give up. Then neither will the Krixtal. We will fight with claws and blades until the end. Other Krixtal warriors gathered behind him. They had abandoned their useless rifles and held only their natural weapons and ceremonial knives. It was not much, but it was something. 40 minutes, Kevin announced. The fleet will be here in 40 minutes. Can we last that long? Megan asked. Before anyone could answer, the walls shook. A massive impact echoed through the station. Then another. Then a third. What is that? Vorex demanded. Kevin checked his scanner. His face went pale. Shadowmaw heavy units. They are breaking through the outer hull. Big ones. Bigger than anything we have seen. The door at the far end of the room began to bend inward. Something strong. Everyone back, Daniel ordered. Behind the consoles. Use whatever cover you can find. The aliens moved quickly. Even Vorax followed the humans' orders without argument. Pride meant nothing when death was breaking down the door. The metal door screamed and tore. A massive shadow maw creature pushed through the gap. It was 3 times the size of the soldiers, with 4 thick arms, and a body that seemed to pulse with absorbed energy. Behind it came more of the smaller ones, dozens of them. "Hold the line," Daniel said. He gripped his knife and prepared to die fighting. Then space outside the window lit up like a sun. The Relentless had arrived. Admiral Santos stood on the bridge as his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into the battle zone. Around him, 11 other human vessels appeared in perfect formation. They were small compared to the Shadowmaw fleet. Plain gray metal, instead of the elegant designs of other species. No glowing shields or beautiful curves. Just functional shapes, built for one purpose. War. "All ships open fire," Santos commanded. "Focus on the largest targets first." The railguns fired. Electromagnetic accelerators hurled solid metal slugs at velocities that made them glow with heat. Each projectile carried more kinetic energy than a nuclear bomb. When they hit the Shadowmaw ships, they did not splash harmlessly against the surface. They punched straight through. The first Shadowmaw cruiser shattered like glass. The second exploded from the inside out, as a railgun round tore through its engine core. The third tried to turn and run, but was caught by overlapping fire from 3 human destroyers. On the station, Daniel watched through the window as the battle changed in seconds. The alien council members gathered beside him, staring in disbelief. "What weapons are those?" Vorax asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Railguns," Kevin said. "They use magnetic fields to accelerate metal projectiles to extreme speeds. Pure kinetic energy. No radiation for the Shadowmaw to absorb. But that technology is so simple." "Simple works," Daniel said. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." In space, Lieutenant Commander Ashley Kim piloted her destroyer Ironclad through the enemy fleet. Her ship was small and fast, designed for close combat. While the larger vessels used railguns from a distance, the Ironclad got up close and personal. "Fire missiles," Kim ordered. The Ironclad launched a spread of kinetic missiles. They were not smart weapons with complex targeting systems. They were just metal tubes filled with explosive and shrapnel. When they hit Shadowmaw ships, they exploded on contact, tearing holes in the dark hulls. "Direct hits on 3 targets," her weapons officer reported. "All 3 disabled." "Good. Find me more." Above the battle, Lieutenant Nathan Cross led his squadron of strike fighters. The small craft were barely armed compared to the capital ships, but they were fast enough to dodge enemy fire and small enough to slip through gaps in the Shadowmaw formation. "Red Squadron, follow me," Cross called out. "We are going for their command ship." The fighters dove toward the largest Shadowmaw vessel. It was a monster, bigger than anything the aliens had ever seen. The other races had tried to destroy it with concentrated fire. They had failed. The massive ship had simply absorbed their attacks and grown stronger. But it had never faced human weapons before. Cross led his fighters in a precision strike. They launched their payload of kinetic bombs at the command ship's critical points. The bombs were small, each one carrying just a few kilograms of explosive wrapped around metal fragments. But when 12 fighters dropped 20 bombs each, the result was devastating. The command ship's hull ripped open in a dozen places. Internal explosions followed as the damage spread. The massive vessel listed to one side, bleeding atmosphere and bodies into space. "Command ship disabled," Cross reported. "The enemy fleet is losing coordination." Santos nodded from the bridge of the Relentless. "All ships, press the attack. Do not let them recover." Back on the station, the Shadowmaw boarding party stopped their assault. The creatures seemed confused, disconnected. Without their command ship directing them, they lost their unified purpose. The massive creature that had broken into the communication center turned toward the window. It stared at the burning ships outside. Then it made a sound that might have been fear. Daniel did not wait. He ran forward with his knife and drove it into the creature's leg. The blade bit deep into the dark flesh. Black liquid sprayed across his arm. The creature roared and swung at him. Daniel ducked under the blow and stabbed again. Laura was beside him a second later, her own blade finding a soft spot in the enemy's side. Warrior Kreth charged from the other direction. His natural claws were designed for exactly this kind of combat. He tore into the Shadow Maw with savage efficiency. Other Krixtal warriors joined him, their blades flashing. The creature fell in less than a minute. The smaller Shadow Maw tried to flee, but the combined force of humans and Krixtal hunted them down one by one. When the last enemy was dead, Daniel stood in the middle of the room, covered in black blood. Around him, aliens stared with expressions of shock and awe. The humans, Amorvani projected, they are warriors. Vorix moved toward Daniel slowly. His crystal body was dim, damaged from the fighting. He looked at the human commander with new eyes. "You saved us," Vorix said. "You and your primitive weapons saved us all." Daniel wiped his blade on his uniform. "We did what needed to be done, that is all." Outside, the battle continued, but the tide had turned. The Shadow Maw fleet was breaking apart under the human assault. Ships that had seemed invincible against energy weapons crumbled under kinetic bombardment. The quiet humans who had sat at the back of the room were quiet no more, and the galaxy would never forget what they had seen. The battle lasted 6 more hours. By the end, more than 2,000 Shadow Maw ships had been destroyed. The rest fled into the darkness between stars, running from an enemy they could not understand and could not defeat. The human fleet had paid a price for their victory. 3 ships lost, 87 men and women who would never go home. Admiral Santos ordered their names recorded and their families notified. He stood alone in his quarters for a long moment, thinking about each one. On Nexus Prime, the survivors emerged from their hiding places. The station was badly damaged. Entire sections had been destroyed or opened to space. Bodies of all species lay in the corridors. Cleanup would take months. But they were alive, because of the humans. Chancellor Vorix called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. The chamber was half empty now. Many delegates had died in the attack. Others had been evacuated to their ships and were still recovering. But enough remained to make decisions. The human delegation walked into the chamber. This time, no one laughed. No one whispered jokes about primitive technology or short lifespans. Every alien in the room stood as Daniel Hayes entered. Vorix rose from his seat at the front. His crystal body still showed damage from the battle, cracks running through his luminous form. He moved slowly down the center aisle until he stood before Daniel. "Commander Hayes," Vorix said. His voice was softer than before. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I wish to offer our deepest gratitude. Your species saved this station. Your weapons defeated an enemy we could not stop. Your courage inspired all of us." Daniel nodded but did not speak. He waited for whatever came next. Vorix continued, "I also wish to offer an apology. We treated your species with disrespect. We mocked your technology and dismissed your contributions. We were wrong." The chamber was completely silent. In 10,000 years of Council history, no Velthari Chancellor had ever apologized to another species. "Why did you help us?" Vorix asked. "After how we treated you, why did you come to our defense?" Daniel thought about the question. He looked at his team standing behind him. Laura, who had fought beside him with nothing but a knife. Kevin, who had kept communications running through the worst of it. Megan, who had warned allies in a dozen different languages. "Because that is who we are," Daniel said. "Humans have a long history. Much of it is violent and ugly. We have done terrible things to each other. Wars, genocide, cruelty beyond imagination." The aliens shifted uncomfortably at his words. "But we have also learned from our mistakes," Daniel continued. "We learned that strength without compassion is meaningless. We learned that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its friends, but how it treats those who have been unkind to it." He paused and looked directly at Vorix. "You mocked us, you dismissed us, but when you needed help, we helped. Not because we wanted your respect or your gratitude, because it was the right thing to do. That is the human way." Vorix stood in silence for a long moment. Then he did something no Velthari had ever done for another species. He bowed. The gesture was awkward for his crystal body, but the meaning was clear. "The Council votes to grant humanity full membership," Vorix announced. "A permanent seat in the inner circle. Equal voice in all matters." The motion passed unanimously. In the weeks that followed, things changed throughout the galaxy. Human engineers worked alongside Velthari scientists to design new hybrid weapons. Kinetic systems, combined with alien power sources, created armaments that no enemy could adapt to. Human soldiers trained with Crystal warriors, teaching them close combat techniques and sharing tactical knowledge. The insects were fast learners. They adapted human fighting styles to their own biology and became even more deadly. Morvani telepaths studied human minds, fascinated by the strange mix of creativity and determination they found there. They reported that human thoughts were chaotic but powerful, like storms that could reshape the world. Commander Samantha Burke led a joint force of humans and aliens back to the worlds the Shadow Maw had conquered. They found survivors on some planets, hiding in caves and ruins. The rescue missions brought thousands of refugees to safety. Daniel Hayes received a promotion and a medal. He did not care about either. What mattered to him was that his people had proven themselves, not through boasting or demands for respect, but through action. 6 months after the battle, a memorial was built on Nexus Prime. It stood in the main plaza where all species could see it. The structure was simple, a pillar of dark stone with names carved into its surface. 87 names, the humans who had given their lives. At its base, an inscription read in 100 different languages. They came not for glory, but for duty. They fought not for recognition, but for what was right. Alien visitors stopped to read the names. They learned to pronounce human names that had once seemed strange to them. Lieutenant Robert Chen, who had died flying his fighter into a Shadow Maw ship to save a crippled ally. Sergeant Patricia Martinez, who had held a corridor alone so civilians could escape. Engineer Aaron Wells, who had kept the Relentless running through impossible damage until his heart gave out. Each story reminded the galaxy that the quiet humans in the back of the room had been warriors all along. 1 year after the battle, the Shadow Maw Collective sent envoys to Nexus Prime. They wanted peace. Their fleet had been broken, their expansion halted. They had learned that the galaxy was not theirs to consume. The Council debated what to do. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted the Shadow Maw destroyed completely. Daniel Hayes asked to speak. "We defeated the Shadow Maw because we had weapons they could not adapt to," he said. "But victory is not the same as wisdom. If we destroy them now, we become like them, conquerors instead of defenders." "What do you suggest?" Vorix asked. "Peace. Real peace. Show them that there is another way to exist in this galaxy. Show them the strength of mercy." The Council voted. It was close, but peace won. The Shadow Maw envoys were shocked. They had expected death. Instead, they found acceptance. Conditions were strict, and trust would take generations to build. But the door was open. On the day the peace treaty was signed, Admiral Santos stood beside Daniel Hayes. They watched the ceremony from a balcony overlooking the main plaza. "Do you think it will last?" Santos asked. "I do not know," Daniel said honestly. "Peace is harder than war, but it is worth trying." Santos nodded. "The galaxy is different now, because of us. Because of 87 good people who did not come home." They stood in silence, remembering the fallen. Below them, aliens of all species walked through the plaza. They passed the human memorial and paused to read the names. Some left flowers. Others simply stood with their heads bowed. The quiet humans had taught the galaxy a lesson. Strength was not measured in the power of your weapons or the size of your fleet. It was measured in what you did when others needed help. It was measured in sacrifice, in duty, in doing the right thing when no one would have blamed you for walking away. Humanity had announced itself to the stars, not with boasts or threats, with blood and courage and simple metal bullets that could not be absorbed. And the universe would never look at the quiet species from the third planet the same way again. The great space station, called Nexus Prime, floated in the darkness between stars. It was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. More than 40 different alien races sent their leaders here to talk, to argue, and to make decisions that would affect billions of lives across thousands of worlds. The main chamber of the Galactic Council was a massive room with seats arranged in a half-circle. The most powerful species sat at the front, close to the speaking platform. Their seats were large and comfortable, decorated with gold and precious stones. The weaker species sat further back. And at the very back of the room, in the smallest and plainest seats, sat the humans. Commander Daniel Hayes led the human group. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in the Earth military for 30 years before taking this job. Beside him sat Lieutenant Laura Mitchell, a young woman with red hair and a fierce spirit. She wanted to speak up every time the aliens insulted them, but Daniel always stopped her with a look. Science Officer Kevin Park sat on the other side. He was a quiet man who spent most of his time studying the alien technology around him. He took notes on everything he saw. Communications specialist Megan Torres completed their small team. She could speak 12 alien languages and was learning more every day. Today was an important meeting. The council was discussing the Shadow Maw Collective, a terrible enemy that was destroying everything in its path. The Shadow Maw were not like other species. They did not want to talk or trade. They only wanted to consume. In the past 10 years, they had swallowed 17 star systems whole. Billions of beings had died or disappeared into their dark ships. Chancellor Vorix the Eternal stood at the speaking platform. He was a Velthari, a species made of living crystal. His body was 8 feet tall and glowed with soft blue light. The Velthari were one of the oldest races in the galaxy. They believed they were better than everyone else. Vorix spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "The Shadow Maw grows stronger with each system they take. We must combine our military forces to stop them." The Crixtal ambassador clicked his mandibles in agreement. The Crixtal were insect-like creatures with hard shells and 4 arms. They were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Their ambassador, General Thresh, stood up on his 6 legs. "The Crixtal war fleet numbers 10,000 ships," Thresh said proudly. "Our plasma cannons can cut through any armor. We will lead the attack." The Morvani delegation spoke next. They were tall beings with gray skin and large black eyes. They had no mouths and communicated through telepathy. Their representative projected his thoughts into everyone's minds. "The Morvani contribute our psionic battle cruisers. Our mental weapons can destroy enemy crews without damaging their ships." One by one, the great powers of the galaxy announced their contributions. Energy weapons, antimatter bombs, shields that could stop any attack, ships that could travel faster than light. The numbers were impressive. The technology was advanced beyond human understanding. Daniel Hayes raised his hand. The chamber fell silent. Then laughter began. It started with a few chuckles and grew into open mockery. Several alien diplomats pointed at the humans and made jokes in their own languages. Megan translated some of them for her team, though she wished she had not. Chancellor Vorix raised one crystalline hand for silence. He looked at Daniel with what might have been amusement. "The human representative wishes to speak," Vorix said. "Tell me, Commander, what does your primitive species wish to offer? More of your chemical rockets? Perhaps some of your projectile weapons that throw tiny pieces of metal?" More laughter filled the chamber. The Crystal General made a sound that was his species' version of a snort. Daniel stood slowly. He was not a tall man by Valthari standards, but he held himself with dignity. "Chancellor, Earth would like to offer—" "Offer what?" Vorix interrupted. "Your species has been traveling between stars for less than 200 years. You still use physical ammunition. Your ships are slow and your shields are weak. What could you possibly offer to this council?" Laura's face turned red with anger. She started to stand, but Kevin grabbed her arm and pulled her back down. "We could offer our help," Daniel said simply. "Our ships, our soldiers, our experience." The laughter returned, louder than before. A Valthari diplomat near the front turned around to look at the humans. His crystal face showed clear contempt. "Experience?" he said. "Your species spent most of its history fighting itself over patches of dirt on a single planet. You nearly destroyed yourselves with nuclear weapons before you even reached your own moon. What experience could you have that would help us?" Daniel did not react to the insult. He simply nodded and sat back down. "That is what I thought," Vorix said. "The humans will observe, nothing more. Now let us continue with serious matters." The meeting went on for several more hours. The alien races argued about who would lead the fleet, who would get credit for the victory, and who would control the territory after the Shadow Maw were defeated. Nobody asked the humans for their opinion again. When the meeting finally ended, the human delegation walked back to their quarters in silence. Their section of the station was small and plain compared to the luxurious areas given to other species. But Daniel had never complained. Laura could not stay silent any longer. "How can you just sit there and take that? They treat us like insects. Less than insects. At least they respect the Crystal." Daniel sat down in a simple chair and looked at his team. "They underestimate us. That is not always a bad thing." "They mock us openly," Laura said. "They think we are nothing." "Let them think what they want," Daniel replied. "Pride comes before a fall. My grandmother used to say that." Kevin looked up from his notes. "Commander, I have been studying their weapons. All of them use energy-based systems. Plasma, lasers, particle beams, antimatter reactions. Everything is energy." "And?" Laura asked. "The Shadow Maw adapt to energy weapons. That is why they keep winning. They absorb the power and become stronger. So all those impressive fleets out there might be useless?" Kevin nodded slowly. "I think so. But I do not think they will believe us if we tell them." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for the communication panel and typed in a secure code, a direct line to Earth. "What are you doing?" Laura asked. "Being prepared," Daniel said. "Just in case." On the screen a face appeared. Admiral Christopher Santos, commander of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. His expression was serious as Daniel explained the situation. "Understood," Santos said when Daniel finished. "The fleet will be ready. Just give the word." The communication ended. The four humans sat in their small room, on a station full of aliens who thought they were worthless. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. None of them knew that in 3 days, everything would change.